BZ Watchdog News Network.
Hill County, here we go again. Another candidate wants power. Another candidate wants trust. Another candidate wants you to believe the campaign slogan instead of the public record. David Gelsthorpe wants to be your next Hill County Commissioner for Precinct 4. He says he's experienced. He says he's trusted. He says he's ready to serve. He says his career has been built on transparency, accountability, fiscal responsibility, integrity, and leadership. That sounds great. But around here, we don't do blind trust. We do receipts. And when you start pulling the receipts on David Gelsthorpe and his household, the picture gets a whole lot uglier than the campaign website wants you to believe. Tonight, we're going to walk you through the records, not rumors, not gossip, not political spin, records. And by the time we're done here, Hill County voters need to ask themselves one simple question. Why in the hell would we hand another seat of public power to somebody whose own paper trail raises this many red flags? Let's get something straight right out of the gate. David Gelsthorpe is running for county commissioner, a job that directly impacts roads, bridges, drainage equipment, infrastructure planning, and taxpayer-funded county operations. Yet, in his own public Facebook responses, David admits he does not have direct experience building roads. That matters, because you're not hiring a mascot, you're not electing a campaign flyer, and you're not voting for a cowboy hat and a slogan. You're voting for somebody who wants authority over county infrastructure priorities and taxpayer money. So when he sells himself as the guy who's going to fix roads and drainage, while admitting he does not have direct road building experience, that is already one red flag. Now, by itself, that may not kill a candidacy, but that's just the beginning. Because once you move past the public comments and start digging into the police records, the contradictions get a whole lot worse. Now let's talk about Coppell. Because David Gelsthorpe's own Joshua Police Department records include his personal history statement. And in that file, David disclosed prior discipline and disclosed that he resigned from the Coppell Police Department during an internal affairs investigation. Let that sink in. This isn't a rumor from Facebook. This isn't an enemy making something up. This is coming from his own background paperwork. So now Hill County voters need to ask, why is a man campaigning on integrity and honorable service leaving prior law enforcement work under an internal affairs cloud? And if that were just one old issue, maybe voters would chalk it up to the past. But then you get to Joshua, and that's where this story starts looking like a pattern. When David applied to Johnson County, the clean version he gave for leaving Joshua was this. He left for professional and personal growth. That sounds neat. That sounds harmless. That sounds like the kind of answer a politician gives when he doesn't want you asking more questions. But then comes the Johnson County background investigation report, and that report tells a much different story. According to that background report, David explained that he was asked to resign as chief of police from the city of Joshua in June of 2024. Asked to resign. That is not the same thing as professional and personal growth. That is not the same thing as I just moved on. That is not the same thing as a clean exit. And when a candidate builds his whole campaign on trust, accountability, and transparency, voters have every right to ask, why did the public get the polished version while the records tell the uglier one? And it doesn't stop there. The background records reflect concerns involving what was described as professional integrity issues. The report references accusations involving time documentation, dishonesty concerns, and association questions tied to a business that had previously been under investigation for illegal gambling machines. Now, to be fair, the record also reflects David's side. It reflects explanations. It reflects that not every allegation was sustained the way some people may assume. Fine, put all of that on the table. But that does not erase the central problem. The problem is that a candidate asking for public trust now has a documented history that raises serious questions about his truthfulness, his judgment, and the circumstances surrounding his law enforcement exits. And voters have a right to factor that in, because this race is not about who can write the nicest website bio. It's about whether the person asking for power deserves it. Now let's talk about the rest of the Gelsthorpe household. Because while David's Joshua exit is raising questions, Kelley Gelsthorpe's Joshua records are a whole separate pile of problems. The records show Kelley was under administrative investigation. They show paid administrative leave. They show resignation. They show acceptance of resignation. And they show a settlement and mutual release agreement. So now look at the timing. Kelley is under administrative scrutiny. Kelley goes on paid leave. Kelley resigns. There's a settlement. And in the same general time frame, David's Joshua records show his inactive date as June 4th, 2024, while the Johnson County background report says he explained he was asked to resign as chief of police. That is not normal. That is not clean. That is not the kind of paper trail that screams, "Trust me with county government." That is the kind of paper trail that tells voters to slow down and ask harder questions. This is the biggest issue in this entire race. David Gelsthorpe is not running on a platform of, hey, I've had some baggage, I've had some controversies, and I want to explain them honestly. No, he's running on polished words like integrity, transparency, accountability, fiscal responsibility, leadership, trusted, experienced, ready to serve. But the records undercut that image. His own background trail ties him to a Coppell IA-related resignation issue. The Johnson County background report says he was asked to resign from Joshua. His public explanation sounds cleaner than what the records show. He wants a county job centered around infrastructure, even while admitting he has no direct road building experience. And the household record trail includes his wife being under administrative investigation, on paid leave, resigning, and leaving under settlement paperwork. That is not the profile of a candidate who should be rubber stamped into office just because he knows how to say public service with a straight face. And this is where Hill County needs to wake up. This county already has enough problems, enough political games, enough insider culture, enough good old boy politics, enough people wanting power while hiding behind titles, connections, or polished public images. The last thing Hill County needs is to add another public official whose own record raises serious questions about honesty, transparency, and judgment. Because once these people get into office, then comes the excuse making. Then comes the backpedaling. Then comes the "that's old news." Then comes the "you're being unfair." Then comes the "this is politics." No, this is due diligence. This is exactly what voters are supposed to do. If somebody wants the authority to make decisions about roads, budgets, public money, and county priorities, then the public has every right to examine whether that person's own record matches the campaign pitch. And in this case, the answer looks like no. So why should the public think twice or flat out refuse to vote for David Gelsthorpe? Here's why. Number one, because his campaign is built on integrity and transparency claims that the records complicate. Number two, because his own background trail includes a Coppell internal affairs related resignation issue. Number three, because Johnson County's background report says he was asked to resign from Joshua, a far cry from the polished professional and personal growth version. Number four, because his public platform focuses on county infrastructure, even though he admitted he has no direct road building experience. Number five, because the timing and surrounding circumstances involving his wife's Joshua investigation and settlement make the overall picture even more troubling. Number six, because Hill County needs fewer red flags in government, not more. And number 7, because if you start a campaign by asking the public to trust you, but the records show the public isn't getting the whole story, then you have already failed the test. David Gelsthorpe wants you to see the cowboy hat, the badge, the website bio, and the slogan. I want you to see the records. And after reviewing those records, one thing is clear. That is not a clean, simple story of a trusted public servant stepping up to help Hill County. This is a story of contradictions, a story of public image versus paper trail, a story of campaign promises colliding with documented questions about past conduct, past exits, and public trust. And Hill County should not reward that with another seat of power. We need less corruption, not more. Less spin, not more. Less polished nonsense and more truth. If a candidate's own record raises this many questions before he even gets into office, imagine what happens after. That's why voters need to look past the campaign language and look directly at the receipts. Because around here, sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I'm BZ with BZ Watchdog News Network. If you want more accountability reporting, smash that like button, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel, and share this everywhere. And as always, we keep digging.
Tyranny, corruption, extortion.
Sunlight is the best disinfectant.
BZ Watchdog News Network.